Good morning, everyone. And firstly, a big thank you to Stephen and the team for giving me the opportunity to speak to you today. We've been focusing on, or I've been focusing on this space for nearly 15 years now. And along that journey, excuse me, I always draw in the air as I speak, so there'll be probably lots of flapping as we go along. But I had a juncture in my career where I found myself, after a certain US bank, which I shall not name, went into bankruptcy a while ago, with my box of worldly possessions of my desk in a cardboard box, thinking, oh my gosh, what am I going to do next? And I had the opportunity to invest in a then very small business called the Bremen Watch Company. And I joined with the very flamboyant title of COO. And I still remember strutting into the office on my first day thinking, I'm the man, I've arrived, and going, wait a minute, where's my desk, which should have my little plaque on it? Technically, I did have a desk, but it was in a flat pack on the side of the office, which I had to build my first day. And of course, you see some knowing nods around here. Opened up my laptop, fired that up, and then realized, actually, I was the head of IT. And for anybody who knows me, that is probably one of the most scary things out there. So I'm going to probably need some of the Fox Williams help on that. But it was an amazing experience. So by day, you the accountant, you the HR function, you operations. By night, you pack the boxes so that you can ship the watches the next morning to make the FedEx cutoff. And then you try sleep at night, but you're not sleeping because you're worried about running out of cash to pay your staff at the end of the month. And it was just an amazing journey. And I think today I wanted to come with that kind of mindset when I was talking to you about what are we seeing in the market space, but more through your eyes, what people are asking about, what people are worried about. So there are three areas we're going to cover in quite quick succession. What is going on in the space, if you want the boring facts. The second one, probably more interesting, is what is driving value right now, or certainly what is driving value in the last 12 months. And that has changed significantly, actually. And then the final thing was actually sitting down and looking and putting a hat on as if you're the business owner or manager, and what are they coming to us with? What are the problems, what are the things they are asking about? This has all got the corporate finance angle to it, so it's going to be based on that. So we'll jump straight into there. We track the space all the time, and so the quick facts are, yes, actually, things are very, very buoyant at the moment. So last year, 2016, we had circa 200 deals in the space, if you like it. We're expecting that this year is going to close circa 30% up on numbers of transactions. However, personally, what I'm seeing, certainly in the UK, is that we are very, very heavily weighted into Q4. We saw a bit of a dip with the elections around, where people were just being cautious, trying to see what was going on. We then had a massive surge through summer, and I'm curious to see actually where we end up the year. But what I think is Q4 and Q1 are going to be very, very busy. So we're going to see deals are taking longer to get done and are falling into that space. We are absolutely at the epicenter when it comes to brands, fashion, retail. Of those deals globally, 50% of those transactions are happening within the UK and Europe. So I think we sit in a very, very interesting space. And I mean, there are a few other trends going on there. Apparel and accessories is way up. We're seeing trends which are, I think, getting driven by the millennial. This millennial person who we're also petrified of. I employ some of them now, so I have them sitting there. But their behavior is absolutely fascinating, and how they look at brands. They're now starting to earn really good money. They're coming into their economic peak, and so it's something to watch. And for example, we're seeing a lot of interest in private equity guys investing in wellness, health, all those lifestyle kind of brands. So in a space. So in very busy and going quite well. The next one was who is actually investing at the moment. So we all live in, or probably most of us live in London. So we sit in a very big pool of private equity capital. You've got every single global private equity house has got an office in London. You look at the history, the last 24 months have seen record amounts of capital being raised. So my automatic assumption was actually they would be leading the charge on transactions and what's going on investing. But actually, if you look at the facts, factually what's happening, 70% of all transactions that have been done this year, 70% have been done by strategic investors, i.e. trade. I think there's a reason for that. I think there's a little bit of caution from the private equity guys of putting that money to work. We are in, I'm afraid Brexit's going to come up a couple of times. We've all been Brexited to death, but there is that element of this uncertainty. The other thing, which takes me on to the last point I was going to cover under this pillar, is valuations. And we are seeing absolutely stonkingly high valuation levels in the marketplace at the moment. And I see a little bit of caution. We've certainly seen it in some of the offers we've received very, very recently. When the private equity guys are looking at their returns, they're going, okay, to buy this, I'm going to have to pay quite a big price. But what if we return to the multiples we were seeing just 2 years ago? I'm then under pressure of actually just trying to get my returns. So moving on to that point of valuations, what is actually happening at the moment? So if we look at back over the last 24 months, 30%, so a third of all deals were delivered at a value of between 11 and 15 times EBITDA, factually. So if we were sitting back 3 years ago, we would have been absolutely, I would have gone, gosh, that is totally overheated. That's incredible. Yeah? Anything more than 10, yes, they're different spaces and things get valued differently. However, one more step back, another 40% of deals are being valued at in excess of 15 times multiples. So we've got 70% of all deals being done in our space on an EBITDA basis are being carrying out at a multiple in excess of 11 times. So that's one data point you can look at, which is pretty factual. The other one, to try and underpin what's going on, is to look at what is happening with our traded company multiples. Now, this is something we look at as a team all the time. And I would encourage you, if you're thinking of doing a transaction or you're thinking of engaging with investors, that's something to look at actively. It gives you a very valid data point that you can talk around. And there's loads of ways people will chip, and there's other ways you can push that up. So looking at all the big guys, and this is across the piece, so luxury, fashion traders, the average trading multiple on EBITDA is 15 times. And within that pool, you've still got some outliers. You look at, I've been gobsmacked with what's happening with Kering, which is, of course, Gucci. 6 months ago, they were trading at 14.3 times EBITDA. Yesterday, they were trading at 19.3 times. It's absolutely crazy. But it's underpinning what's going on in the market. So it's very good times at the moment. We can see, I think, why private equity is struggling a little bit. But they've got lots of capital, so it's a fascinating time to be raising capital. So that was the first pillar I wanted to cover. The next one, which is probably more of interest now, is where we're starting to go into the softer side of things, which is what is driving deal value. So we sat down with our team, and this was now putting on the hat of the investors. We were going through the notes of the topics and we tried to come up with the top 3 topics that investors have asked for every single time. And it was fascinating because the first one, and this one came up 9 out of 10 times. So 90% of the time, the first thing that was being asked, or the main focus from an investor, was international. Do you have the ability for your brand? Are you selling outside the UK already, or are you focusing on doing that? Do you have the ability to grow outside of the UK? It's pretty obvious, obviously, the ability to scale a brand globally means you're more valuable to me. I think there, again, is this underlying challenge with Brexit, where we are UK-centric brands. People are going, actually, it's a natural hedge. It gives you some currency protection, and also it then obviously reduces your reliance on the UK. So my message on that one, I was gobsmacked, because the next one is the one I thought would be the first and most important point, is think very carefully about what your plans are as a brand. If you do have any of these elements already, don't underplay them, actually. Make them the forefront of what you're talking about and where you're taking your business. So that was the first one. The second one, to me, was obvious, the one I thought about, which is online and digital, and what is that doing to your business. So online is obviously not a fad anymore. It is here to stay. But what we've noticed in the presentations when we're presenting to investors is an absolute drilling on that front. and this comes to some of the points that Rosie was talking about, you are expected to understand that space intimately. You're expected to know all the dynamics that are going on. You're expected to talk the lingo. There's no excuse. They expect you to run that part of your business as if it is your main high street flagship store, with the same amount of vigor, the same amount of rigor. They expect you to have hired good talent in that space. So that is another very, very, very key piece. And then another interesting thing we're seeing is how technology actually is starting to morph into retail. So it's covered quite a lot, but we've seen some of our traditional high street clients who have got big store estates, so they've got a big real estate side, investing in reasonably high-tech kit like beacon technology, where they're looking to see how people are using their stores, where they're dwelling. I know you've then looked at a dress, you've gone to my changing room, you've tried it on, but you might not have bought it because you didn't end up at the till. But then I track you online and I see actually you went home, you tried on the dress, you've thought about it, can possibly market to you, and then you've bought it. So they're using that as their behavior. But so it's not just software tech, it's actually some hard tech that people are looking at. So another trend that is going on. And then the final one, which is my favorite one, and I guess this also comes back to the experience at Bremen, is direct. Owning your client. This is a significant value driver. And what I mean by that is knowing who your client is, knowing how they behave, knowing how they spend. So, and being able to articulate that to an investor and why do they shop with you? Why do they buy your product? And again, this comes back probably a little bit to what Nigel was carrying on, is this ability of owning that data. That data is incredibly valuable. We've seen there's some specific private equity houses out there who will go in and buy a brand. If there's a very big data source, they'll then actually sell the brand but and keep the data, because that's worth actually higher multiples. It's a fascinating space. So don't underestimate that. And what I like about the direct piece now is everything's starting to pull together quite neatly. If you've got your own store estates, you've got your online, everything is starting to really kind of talk, and it's to understanding how you use your stores in the same framework of trying to capture this direct client and controlling that brand. So those were the three things that have come up, and what we did was we've looked, that's over the last 12 months of deals we've been doing, and that's directly from the investor side. The next piece was, and the final piece I wanted to talk about was actually putting on the hat of the business owner. And again, we did the same exercise and looked at the first meeting notes when we were talking to people. And we came up with, there were 4 things that constantly came up. The first one is, I imagine, is on all your minds. It's certainly on mine as a business owner right now, is the uncertainty of what's going on in what I would probably mark this angry politics we've got at the moment. This uncertainty. Yes, Brexit to death, as I've said before. But there's an underlying driver there where entrepreneurs, certainly, and business managers are quite worried about, and there's 2 elements. One is entrepreneurs' relief. Is it going to be around? Are they going to pull it away? Do I have a chance now to actually try and extract some wealth out of my business and take advantage of that great tax break? And then the other one, which concerns me a lot more, is EIS and SEIS, especially for small brands. If the government there's rumours that they're going to start thinking about actually overhauling and taking that away. And I think that'll be an absolute disaster, because for small brands, it is an absolute life source. It's the lifeblood to getting these guys investment capital at a time when no one else will touch them. And I think that EIS and SEIS has been fundamental in getting a lot of the brands off the ground. So so it's this unknown, and I think we're all in the same thing. Who knows where we are. I was actually at a talk last week where we had someone talking about America, and then everyone was then chuckling. All of us, all the Londoners, were sitting there chuckling about Trump. And then we actually had someone stand up and talk about our own political situation at the moment. And actually, the room went very, very quiet. And then we had a guy from Mexico talking about how chuffed he was because his construction firm was one of the final 3 guys bidding to build the wall. So it was amazing. I mean, we're living in fascinating times. So watch the space. And I mean, my personal view is, I'm just kind of keeping my head down and just doing what you do best. We can't control everything. But so that's one piece. The next one is, so the next 3 are very specifically focused on investment and when they're seeking investment. So the first one is everyone's getting quite aware that the standard routes of private equity and things aren't necessarily the only routes. So the one question we're getting a lot is, how do I make myself known to potential international or trade buyers? I think it's actually relatively simple. I mean, you know your businesses very, very well. So my challenge back to the guys is actually start to think about it quite early on. Start to encourage conversations. Start to think about how you can get on their radars. What we like to do is try and work out who you think you'd be a very good fit for and the reasons why. And a lot of these big businesses now have incubators and venture arms themselves. And the people within those teams their sole existence on the planet is to find young brands for these big businesses. So it's actually quite a soft way of approaching. But start those conversations quite early on. The next one is private equity and family offices, and family offices more so. But private equity is still a very, very fundamental part of the market in raising investment. I think they form quite an important function. Yes, possibly they're having a bit of a difficult time with the competitiveness of getting into the deals. But one element to seriously consider with them is I find that businesses, when we take businesses to a market who have already had private equity ownership, they come with this incredible amount of rigor. It's almost like a tick in the box that you are going to be well run. You're going to have all your reporting up to standards. Your management team are going to be really well grilled, incentivized for results. So it's not one to overlook. But the other piece is the family offices, and I have been absolutely fascinated. And quite a big part of our practice now is working with some of these family offices. So the first understatement people make with them is they are incredibly sophisticated now. They employ some of the brightest minds. They are as sophisticated as any bank or private equity house. But they bring another element to them, which is this kind of softer side, which I find absolutely fascinating. When you're sitting here with your client presenting to these family offices, is generally it would have been, by its pure nature, is entrepreneurially run. So you're sitting talking to this person who has been on a very similar journey. He or she knows that your business plan is not going to go as you've beautifully modeled it or we've beautifully presented it. There are going to be problems and falls along the way. And then with that, is certainly if they are investing in the space they know, they overlay an incredible amount of infrastructure and know-how and the ability to execute on the back of their platforms. And the other thing we're seeing is the amount of capital they now prepared to put at work is actually staggering. Traditionally, they would be investing in the private equity funds, but now they like to have a pot of cash that they invest direct. Instead of having to pay those funds and those fees, they're doing it anyway for themselves. So they're really, as I say, they've almost like busted onto the scene, the family offices, and there's something to be taken quite seriously. And then the final one, so number 4, I've only seen really in the last 6 months. I mean, it's been around for a while. We've had a number of strong, so these are, I'll categorize the businesses. They're probably reasonably decent sized businesses. They're doing EBITDA of around, say, 5 million is an interesting benchmark. And they've got strong management teams and typically have a majority founder who wants to either step away, who is no longer involved with the business. And we've had a couple of the teams come along and go, we've thought about, we run our business, we've done really well, we're growing like mad. We want to buy the company ourselves. We want to run our own MBO. And what they'll do is they'll typically add some advisors, find their legal team, but then what they'll do is they'll approach the banks directly and structure their own deal. And we're seeing quite a lot of appetite from the banks to actually support those levels of business. So, and this is where cash is actually being lent from the bank, and it's actually going straight out the door to fund the previous founder or owner. So that is the last thing we're seeing. So a little bit like a DIY one. So I think, in summary, we're in a fascinating time, and lots of things to consider. But that's what we're seeing in the latest trend. So from my side, a big thank you to Fox Williams and the team for hosting us, and welcome any questions you may have at this point. Thank you. Yes.
Is there a difference between valuation multiples on digital businesses versus purely analog?
Absolutely. Absolutely, and it's a little bit difficult to pin down. So we worked on one over summer, and you do have to pin it down somehow. But the multiple we got was on revenue. It was a small business growing very fast, but it had something very, very specific about it, which someone liked. Strategic investor, funny enough. US listed business bought it. They paid 20 times revenue. So it is quite remarkable. You can get it makes no sense when you look at it from a pure numbers point of view, but when you looked at it strategically, if we could isolate what they wanted specifically about this business, they snapped it up.
Valuation was based on revenue rather than profit.
Yeah, we didn't have any. Yeah, so it was loss making. Yeah. But it had a very interesting twist on the technology that they'd had developed in-house. So again, this is an outlier, but I'm trying to make that point. It's very difficult actually to value them. And I was going back to the listed companies. They are always a great area to start at. And the typical chip you'll get from an investor will be, well, you're so much smaller. But then all we do is we overlay the growth that we experience as a business and go, well, yes, but you're growing at 2%, I'm growing at 30%. So, you can kind of equal it out that way. But it's a good starting place. Yeah. Great. Any other questions?
What's the main reason behind the appetite for companies to pay such a high EBITDA multiple?
Yeah.
What are the main reasons underlying?
I think they are chasing the growth, absolutely chasing the growth. So, example, Michael Kors buying Jimmy Choo. There's a great mid-market deal this year, Olivia Burton. I mean, every private equity house was in the running for it. It was a great business. Movado swooped in, paid a stonking price, and bought the business out. So they've got their big established brands, which are growing at 2 or 3%. But they've got the infrastructure. They've got the store estates. They've got all the channels. They've got the distribution warehouses globally. They have everything set up. They then introduce this young brand. Richemont, with kind of old inventors of doing that, they bring it in and absolutely explode it. It's got to be of a certain size, though. So there's two elements that we're seeing there about your brand value is time. How long have you been around for? Have you really established yourself? And there are one or two criteria size-wise to prove that you're there to stay, and then they'll come in and snap it up. So, yeah, so I absolutely.
Is it, what's so specific about right now that these big finance houses are willing to pile in? The purchase of matches fashion.
Yes.
Basically was enormous.
Absolutely stonking off. Absolutely.
What's happening right now that's urging this push?
Yeah. I think it's
seems to be more than just a few examples.
So one thing is the amount of capital around is absolutely stonking. So you look at their balance sheets, they're sitting on a lot of cash. The private equity houses have raised records amounts of money. So it sits in the bank account earning 0.5, sometimes negative if you're sitting in France. And they've got to put that capital to work. So that is it. Money needs a home. So it's pushing up those prices. If they can get a 10% return, they'll buy hand for it. So I think that's one of the underlying ones. Yeah. Great. Super. Great. Thank you. Thank you very much.